It began in 1963. By 2002, its nomenclature changed from the Organization of African Unity to the African Union. At the time, President Kufuor was in power in 2002. How have we done? How well have we done as the AU? Take a look at this beautiful story.
When you hear of African unity, what does that mean to you as an international relations expert?
Well, it means a lot. It means that we're still continuing the journey from Pan-Africanism, and the desire to have Africa as one is still on. The flame has not died. And so when I hear of African unity, I believe in what our forefathers started. There are several hiccups. When I hear of AU, what comes to mind is not the journey as a bad journey, but what comes to mind are the hiccups that is making the journey tortuous and very difficult trajectory to move. So the AU, for me, is a positive thing. We need to hang on to it. We need to perfect it. We need to strive hard and move away the hurdles gradually so that we reach where our founding fathers wanted us to be.
Certainly, you talk about our founding fathers and the dream of unification.
Yes.
Do you think we're anywhere near that goal?
It's difficult. You know, we started as a political kind of, or we started off with the thinking that politically we could unite. Then we came to the reality, the realization that there is a reality. Integration is no longer that kind of political wishes. It has its own logic. And integration in the form that Nkrumah wanted, if you got independence, you joined. If you got independence, you joined, and it will be one at the end. It was no longer feasible. What was feasible was rather a kind of regional economic integration. And could you lump all the 47 sub-Saharan African countries together, or the 54 total African countries together, and say we are getting united? It's difficult because integration is trade-induced. As trade-induced as it is, it means creating the conditions for the lowering of barriers to trade and shoring up those things that will make trade work. Infrastructure, institutions, that's supranational institutions, and getting one currency, and that's the logic is there. You can't bypass that logic. The moment you try to bypass that logic, you run yourself into many problems. And that is what the AU is facing now. The AU started as a nascent organization for political kind of discourse. It didn't work, or it was hiccuping. So now they understood it and decided that away from the founding fathers' dream, let us have regional integration. Now, the building blocks for regional integration should be the regional blocks. AMU, that's the Arab Maghreb Union, ECOWAS, SADC, the South Africa, the EAC, and the one in Central, ECAS, Economic Community of Central African States. This was the dream in Abuja, 1991, which was very perfect. In fact, the political economists which drew this program, Dedeji Adebayo and others, knew that was the perfect, because that is what the literature says, and that's what the logic is. Unfortunately, politics, whatever it is, global political economy and the vicissitudes of globalization created the condition for us not to go by that way. We're still hanging on to that one way or the other, ECOWAS and that kind of thing. But new ones cropped up. So you have a spaghetti kind of thing, multiple membership. Now, integration hates that. You can't belong to two groups. But if you check up, DR Congo belongs to 4 different groups. In ECOWAS, we have UEMOA and ECOWAS. When you go to East Africa, some of them are in SADC, some of them are in COMESA, and they are still in EAC. This kind of multiple membership, which you call the spaghetti bowl of African integration, is the biggest drain problem for. But if we had had ECOWAS as one ECOWAS, 15, 16 countries with one currency, the next one with another currency, the next one with another, then what Abuja told us, it gave itself 34 years trajectory from 1991 to 2025, would have gotten one Africa, one currency, infrastructure moving left and right. These are the basic problem of the AU now. And so you see the AU is now trying to move away from that, and they started with the tripartite FTA, free trade area, with SADC, COMESA, and EAC together. It doesn't solve the spaghetti bowl issue. Now they want a continental free trade area spanning more than 27, 30 countries. That is worse. Because you need infrastructure. You need lowering of barriers to trade. How does Egypt trade with South Africa? How does Egypt trade with Botswana? And you are lumping all of them together in one FTA. That is the basic problem. The second basic problem of AU not meeting its targets is the question of funding. 67% of AU funding comes from the EU. He who pays the piper calls the tune. And we are really under a problem there. The third basic problem, which is also very devastating, is what we call security communities. Once you are building integration, you have to turn it into a security community. NATO is the backbone of the EU. You are making some trouble for EU. NATO will come in to stop that kind of.
Yes.
Do we have that in Africa? So already in ECOWAS, how many security problems we have had in terms of intrastate fighting in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, and these kind of hotspots in Africa is also problematic for the AU. So we will be spending more money on security rather than nation building and economic building.
To what extent do you think that the sovereignty of the various African states, in fact, hinders the call for united Africa?
Yes, one way or the other, it does hinder. But sovereignty these days has no serious meaning because of globalization and interconnectivity and interconnectedness. However, sovereignty comes in because of this security issues, where in a state you have intrastate conflicts and things like that. So people put integration at the back burner and they want to secure their states. So Yaya Jammeh or Cote d'Ivoire or any other country would like to ensure that the security of the state is intact before he thinks about integration. And that is the bane, that is the problem that the AU is facing. Luckily, the AU has been very active in peacekeeping efforts, has been very active in having what we call the peace and security architecture with the Peace and Security Council, but it is taking a chunk of the AU money. We have hybrid peacekeeping where the UN assists the AU in trying to make sure that these sports, and especially it's been exacerbated also by jihadism, whose center is shifting more to Africa than in the Middle East. Because while the Middle East is burning and churning, what we are seeing is that people are returning to Africa for safe havens, and that is the danger. One way or the other, I think if we are able to solve that problem, we'll be heading towards a good decision. Agenda 2063, for example, makes it clear what things we want to do and to reach that diadem where we say that Africa is a continent, a united continent, playing its role in the world. And that's what we are heading to, and that is what AU is also heading towards.
So having said all this, the Continental Free Trade Area is one that has gained, it's a discussion that has gained a lot of attention. Do you think it is going to be beneficial, and do you think it's even going to be realized?
It is difficult. As I said, integration has a certain logic. When you despise the logic, you run into several problems. The CFTA, that's the Continental Free Trade Area, will run into the very problems that the sub-regional idea runs into. I have always said as a researcher that it were better for the AU to concentrate on rationalizing the RECs, that's the regional economic communities, giving them boundaries. So like 16 countries, because Mauritania is coming, 16 countries in West Africa, the AMU, the ECAS carve them out and tell countries to belong to one each. Then, with their logic, they move to. But if at the one and the same time we are talking about continentalism, because the CFTA is the idea of continentalism, and at the same time the logic of integration pushes us towards sub-regionalism, we are heading towards a clash. And that clash is that, whilst I'm interested in my ECOWAS, you are forcing me to move ECOWAS to join the CFTA at a later stage. You are forcing SADC to be part of the CFTA. But the hiccups will be there. So I think, and as I teach integration, I always maintain that going back to Abuja, 1991, the tenets of Abuja, will be the best for the AU. So we are going to have several more hiccups with the CFTA. And many of my colleagues are writing about that. A good idea, good intentions, and Africa is good at bringing about grandeur programs, oblivious to the fact that there are hiccups along the way. I'm not a fan of the CFTA, honestly speaking. I'm a fan of Abuja 91. And I believe that if we rationalize the RECs, using them as building blocks for a continental union, that is where we belong. And that is more plausible than the way we are talking about continentalism. And you know, one side of the continentalist idea is also sentimentalist. You have the leftists always chanting Pan-Africanism, one Africa. It doesn't happen without a base. You know, yes, one Africa. And going to some part of Africa, I've got to go through Europe. But if you go by the building blocks, gradually building, the gradualist approach, as was discussed in Accra 2007, you know, they call it the grand debate, where Obasanjo brought a certain idea, Gaddafi brought a certain idea, and Thabo Mbeki brought the best of the ideas. Rationalize the rest. Let's go back to Abuja. That was Thabo Mbeki. Obasanjo wanted us to use the 15 supranational organs of the AU and quickly build onto it, get a triumvirate of past presidents to be the presidents of Africa, and then we move. Gaddafi went back to Kwame Nkrumah and said, today, let's announce, one union and get a president and let's move away. These things don't happen. They have a logic. They have a logic. If you don't eat, you don't grow. So you can't tell me grow. Why so I don't eat? So we need to go by the logic and the steps that would take us to integration. So it looks as though exactly sustainable and secure. We have now known that in our quest for integration, there are problems. And once we have identified these problems, why are we waiting? Where is the infrastructure? Barriers to trade, they are all over. Niger has 76% of its revenue coming from border barriers, but these have to go away, you know, those barriers to trade. And any other things that create conditions for non-trade, we have to remove all that. Security-wise, we've got to make sure that there is peace. Then production. What are you creating integration for? Integration is for the market. And therefore, you need to create the market. So from your FTA to your customs union, and you know, how can you create one customs union when some of the countries belong to different unions? Customs union will never happen. All right? Then you go to the common market, that level. At that level, you are allowing free movement of goods and services and of persons and establishment. And then the final level being having a common currency. When you harmonize all your macroeconomic fundamentals, you got the currency. What we are doing, it will take us
we are moving from top bottom.
Exactly. That's not correct. That is not correct. They are not listening to the researchers. They are not listening to the gurus in integration. Because a lot of my colleagues in integration, Professor Adesina, Soromeku, who else? They are all there. OB, in Ghana, Professor SKB Asante, the doyen of integration in Africa. All these persons, you know, Oluko Shina, everybody is writing against a system that defies the logic of integration. So
they are not listening.
Well, they will not listen. When they meet at the heads of state, this thing, and they chuckle their glasses, they want grandeur programs where they append their signature. Unimplementable. Then we go for aid from Europe, and they tell us what to do. The more Balkanized we are, the more it is for Europe and the Americas and the Chinas, because they trade with us individually. We have gotten AU policies, but they don't work because we are not united. For example, the AU mining policy, the AU agriculture policy, but EU, it works. They have EU agricultural policy. It's all there for the EU. EU foreign policy. So that when Tony Blair wanted to deal with China in a certain specific way, a Brighton, a British citizen, who was the commissioner for foreign trade, just told Tony Blair, you have no right to do that. That is integration.
Because it works, yeah.
Yes, that's how it works. So they have to listen to those who are researching and telling them that look, integration has a logic. They should tell the sentimentalists who want Pan-Africanists, they should tell them the logic is there. They should tell all those who want to make score political marks because they are paying for integration to note that you can pay as much billions as possible, but it won't work. You won't reach there unless you go by the logic of integration.